Welcome to Mentoring in Real Life, where we talk about what it takes to find and be a great mentor. I'm Angela, and together with my co-host Bill, we know the power of mentoring and what it can do in your life on both sides of the table. If you're interested in learning tips, tricks, and hearing stories about mentoring, you're in the right place. Come join us. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Angela.
Good to see you. Let's talk about mentoring. Today, we're exploring what mentoring means to each of us, why it's important to have mentors and to be a mentor, and whether or not Bill and I still have mentors today. Bill, you ready to dive in?
Let's get started.
All right. So, hey, first question, what is your earliest memory of having a mentor?
Well, I did a lot of thinking about this, and I actually would have to say I was fortunate enough to have two good mentors early in life, mom and dad. There was unquestionable mentoring going on in addition to all the obedience training that they gave us as kids. There was a whole lot of mentoring about what's important in life. I mean, it turns out they both were World War II veterans, mom and dad. Dad was in the Navy, mom was a Marine. And so they had very, very strong ideas about the importance of service and service to the country and serving something greater than yourself. And that helping to put meaning in your life. And so those were terrific mentoring moments that were captured often in stories around the dinner table, where they would describe their experiences in earlier life, everything from where they went to school and what careers they chose to how they treated people in those careers. And so that has stuck with me forever.
And if I remember right, your mom was a Marine, always a Marine, right?
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
That's right. And she actually worked as well outside the home.
She did. So she was, believe it or not, even though she was a Marine, one of the first women Marines, she did that during the war and then got out and raised a family. But in the midst of raising a family, she also ran a summer camp for girls for 25 years. So in addition to raising 4 kids and keeping dinner on the table and all the things that a traditional old school mom used to do, she ran the camp in the summer and did all of the advertising and finding new campers all through the winter. And so she was a pretty amazing lady for being able to juggle a ton of responsibilities and with such grace. Again, some great mentoring in the way that she handled 1,000 things going on in her life all the time.
And your dad, of course, also worked outside the home, from what I remember.
Well, he worked outside the home, and then at some point he decided he wanted to become an inventor, and so he worked inside the home, which had its own challenges of dad always being home.
You couldn't get away with much.
That getting away with stuff was not a really good plan in our house because you, first off, didn't get away with it, and second, you thought you were getting away with it and then paid lots of dues later. But that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah. And so you had insight into seeing through your parents, mentoring in terms of what they believed in life, as far as service to your country, as far as service to others, leadership. And then you went to the Naval Academy.
I did, and that's not in no small part because my dad also went to the Naval Academy. And so he had told many, many stories about how much fun he had there and how much laughing and how much great camaraderie there was, and which was all true. He sort of left out the part that kind of sucked that first year. But I had never seen him prouder than when I went there. And he was a tough mentor because if it got tough and I was bitching about it, time to suck it up, dude. This is important and it's going to be helpful for you later in life. And so part of the mentoring was as Dan Fogelberg used to refer to it, the velvet hammer. He was pretty hard-nosed, but with compassion, I guess.
Yeah, life isn't roses all the time.
At first year, it wasn't roses anytime, as I recall.
I understand that completely.
I think we might get to that part for you at some point for going to a different service academy.
Yes.
Some might say the other or even the wrong one, but we can cover that later.
Academy? Yes. Well, I went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado. And as we like to say, altitude-wise, at least, we were far, far above that of West Point or Annapolis.
Sure. You were higher than we were. Okay, got it.
We were higher than you were. And so then thinking about, then you transition and you're a Navy officer. You go through your 4 years at the academy and you become a Navy officer. What do you remember about one of your first mentoring experiences in your professional life?
Fortunately, that's another easy one for me because I had the great fortune to have a terrific commanding officer on my very first ship. Such a leader and such a terrific role model for everybody on the ship. And I found that to be true, not just for me, but all of my shipmates who expressed the same undying respect for this guy. It was just incredible to watch how much he loved what he did. And it was not just inspiring, but it was contagious. And so as I'm standing watches as one of the junior officers up on the bridge, he'd be sitting out in the captain's chair on the deck and sort of just turned to me with a big smile on his face. Bill, can you believe that they pay us to do this stuff? And, with saltier sailor language, of course. But it was just, the way he loved what he did was absolutely inspirational. And so it became apparent to me, it's obviously really critical, and it's almost cliche, but there's plenty of people who don't get it early enough in life. Loving what you do, since you're going to be doing so much of it in your work life, is fundamental to good mentoring. Helping people to find what it is they'd love to do and helping them achieve success in that area was just a tremendous learning mode for me when I was on that ship, as well as the other part that I thought was critical. As hard as we worked for him while we were on duty, he also was the first guy to teach me about work-life balance. Early in my young career, I was on the ship working in the engineering department, at which, for those of people who have never been in the engineering department on a ship, they typically are working later hours than a lot of the other departments on the ship. It just goes with the territory on old steamships. But there I was at 3:45 in my stateroom working through some paperwork or something, and he walked and he said, "Bill, I thought we said we were going to meet at the officers club at 4 o'clock, and here it's 3:45. Yes, sir, but the chief engineer wants me to get something done." And he said, "I'm sorry, what part of I'm the captain and I told you we're going to the club at 4 o'clock did you not understand?" And so with a big broad smile on his face, I said, "Yes, sir, I'm closing up now." It really stuck with me, that single instance, but it was not just that one time. It was always. We work hard and then we go play hard together and we built relationships at work that were fortified by our personal relationships that we continued to establish after working hours and built camaraderie like few other places that I've ever been.
Yeah. Yeah, that work-life balance piece of it is key. I actually remember one of my first mentors when I was a young officer as well, and he did so much good for me. He made sure that I sat at the table with the executive team in the program. I was in a program office where we were building a surveillance aircraft, and he wanted me to push myself, and he put me in roles that mostly people who were 3 levels more senior to me took on. He gave me tasks that were far beyond what I thought I was capable of, and he did that because he saw in me something that he wanted to nurture and grow as a leader. It's interesting though, when you talk about work-life balance, one of the keys that I learned about him though is what not to be necessarily, in that as much as I adored him and his work, I also recognized he often was the first one there and the last one to leave. And he lived an hour and a half away, and he had a family that included young kids. And I recognized early that he wasn't necessarily taking care of himself and his health, and he wasn't necessarily connected to his family. Those were 2 values that I knew that were important to me. And so while I learned from him the art of sitting around the executive table and how to speak and learning about strategy, and I learned so much about strategic thinking and about what's important in terms of senior leadership, what they care about, how they communicate. I also learned necessarily what I don't want to be. And so the lesson was that I didn't need to be a carbon copy of any person, that I needed to find who I was going to be as a leader and grow into that and kind of learn along the way about what I liked and what frankly I didn't like as well.
Yeah, I would totally agree that there's a lot to be said for picking and choosing what works for you. And so in any mentoring relationship, it doesn't mean you do everything exactly the way your mentor does it, as you obviously picked up. And I think that's an important piece in discussing this and in discussing it with anybody who wants to be a good mentor. First off, there's no reason to be offended if people don't take everything that you put down. And as a mentee, you don't have to feel obligated to do so, to take everything that the mentor says. It's it's certainly up to you. You're the only one who can set your own priorities in your life. And to build on what you were talking about, throughout a professional career, I would suggest that those priorities shift. If you're young and single, you don't have kids at home, and you think, I can put it all in. I love being at work, and I can put everything into that, and there's nobody waiting at home for me. Great, that's a great thing, and go get them. And as life continues, and you find that, oh, now I'm married, and now I have little ones around, maybe my priorities are going to shift a little bit. And that's totally fine. And it's an important part to recognize in these relationships, both for the mentor and mentee, to recognize different people at different stages of their professional career and their personal lives are going to manage the priorities in different ways that have to work for them and their families.
Absolutely.
So I think your points are very well taken.
Yeah, and it's not to say that there aren't going to be times, as both you and I know, where there's going to be longer days, there's an ebb and flow.
I've heard something about that.
And it doesn't have to be consistently that way, I think is what I learned early on from that experience.
Well, in fact, one of my more recent, but it's still a while back, more recent mentors was in fact the head of the same organization that I eventually became the head of. And she had talked at length in some of her mentoring discussions about the fact that those priorities evolve through your career. And so when they're tiny little kids, as a parent, you're going to spend more time at home because you need to. And it's important to the kids, and it's probably important to you as well. And then as they grow up and they go off to college and so forth, okay, now your priorities might shift again, and you might be back at work, and it's just fine because there's nobody absolutely depending on you. It may be even before they go to college. If they're in school all day and then practice for some sports or whatever in the afternoon, you have that time back again to spend at work. And again, I think the key in it, if you're having a conversation between mentor and mentee, is to go over what your priorities are and make sure everybody can live with whatever recommendations are being made. That it's just critical for both sides to understand that those priorities evolve over the time of their relationship.
That's right. And so you and I have had a mentoring relationship for how long, Bill? How long has it been? A very long time.
I can't count that high.
More than our fingers and toes, probably.
Yes.
So what prompted us to start this podcast?
Well, I think really what it was all about was acknowledging that we had watched a number of times the organization we were working for sort of go after mentoring programs in fits and starts. And I certainly remember at the time, long before I was the guy in charge, it seemed to me that in typical large bureaucracy fashion, and I'm going to say that this is not just government, large corporations are large bureaucracies too. So it's not unique to government, I don't think. But in any large organization, when people try to put formal mentoring programs together, I think they often miss the point. It's not something that each mentoring relationship looks just like the next one. And the relationships are not going to be the same between varying mentors and mentees. People will interact differently and they'll own things differently. And so I think we wanted to go over in this series is to talk about what makes a successful mentor and mentee relationship, and what are the typical pitfalls to try and avoid as you're going through that, establishing that. I'm not saying you can't do it through a formal mentoring program, but if you turn it into a check the box evolution as opposed to actually worrying about how does a mentor really help grow the mentee, and how does that mentor also find ways to do lots of learning from the mentee. If you miss those points and you just think it's something that you do by rote, I think you're going to miss a lot.
Yeah. One of the things you brought up just now is seeing people and how they leveraged mentors and mentees. And my experience is that too many don't leverage a mentorship relationship at all. They don't find good mentors, or they aren't a good mentor and have great mentees. The idea of mentoring can be kind of nebulous. Sometimes it's hard to understand what a formal mentoring relationship looks like, or what even an informal mentoring relationship looks like. And so part of what we're trying to do in this podcast is to capture stories that we can describe what good mentoring looks like. We can provide ideas on how to be a good mentor, how to find a good mentor, how to be a great mentee. There is such a realization, you and I have talked about this before, in the reward that comes in mentoring others. When you have a great mentee and you have mentored them and they do more amazing things for a company, for an organization, the amount of satisfaction that comes at seeing that happen, at the realization that while we deserve no credit or want no credit, that we may have had a part in it, in helping a person mature in their own technical skills, professional skills, leadership, and we help them and advocate for them in doing bigger and better things across the organization. And so just wanting to have the concept of mentoring become a clearer and better understood concept and provide people with experiences that either you and I have had, or collecting stories from people that we know on mentoring, or interviewing people and having guests on to the podcast. All of that is with the intent of recognizing mentoring is really, really important. It's been incredibly beneficial to me. It's been incredibly beneficial, I know, to you as well. And we want to capture that. And we want the lessons that you and I have learned and that we'll gather from other people to be available to whomever wants to hear them.
I want to build on something else that you said, because I'm going to emphasize one more time what great fulfillment comes from seeing one of your mentees succeed. Some of the most rewarding moments in my professional career came from watching people that I was mentoring totally succeed and grow way beyond what they thought they could do. And I'm not saying that because I'm so insightful. It's what they had told me in the early mentoring conversations, said, oh, I could never do this, or I could never be that. And as we worked through the issues and worked through what was holding them back, it was phenomenally rewarding. And I just mean internally. It was a gift to be able to be a mentor for somebody and watch them succeed, having to take absolutely no credit for it, but being thrilled with watching success for those people. And so there's any number of people, I'm looking at one of them, but others too, who had, I would say, serious success in their careers. And watching that happen, if you're a senior person watching this podcast, don't miss out on this opportunity, because this is a fulfillment that has nothing to do with money, certainly not money for you. It might mean more money for your mentee at some point in their life. But the fulfillment and reward that you get from watching others succeed is extraordinary.
Absolutely. Forbes actually had a study that showed 75% of executives say mentoring has been important to their career. And so when we think about why mentoring is important, what do you see as the biggest reasons?
It's important for any company, for any organization, to support the growth of the people who are coming into the organization. And if you're one of the more experienced people at the organization, you are the person who has sort of the insights for how things have worked, what success looks like, and how you achieved it. And so you can be that source of knowledge for people who are new to the organization in a way that few other people can. And so as they come into an organization, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, you get to help them set some goals. And you get to hold them accountable for achieving some of those goals. Is my supervisor a mentor? They could be, but that's not the relationship that we're really talking about here. It's about being able to be a third party, not an immediate supervisor or a direct report, where you can have sort of an interested and a caring concern for their success, but you're not the one grading it. You're not the one who's giving orders day to day. And so you get to offer encouragement in a different way. Encouragement isn't, hey, do your job. It's, let's talk about what's important to you and how this can benefit you. And then I actually am disappointed I didn't lead with this, is the mentor has got to be able to be a great, great listener. They have to be able to sit there in silence and listen without judgment, listen to understand. And so there'll be lots more in this in other podcasts, but that listening piece to hear what it is that your mentees are all about and what interests them becomes phenomenally important to that relationship. So for me, those are really important pieces. And the learning to listen is actually, it turns out, very important, not just for mentoring relationships, but for personal relationships. And so that turns out to be a very effective way to communicate, is to start by listening. And so I think those are all really important reasons to get started as a mentor, because it benefits the mentees, obviously. It actually benefits the mentor, in that personal growth that comes with that.
You reminded me of something. You mean to tell me that being a mentor, it's not incumbent on me to actually drive the person's career? It's not incumbent on me to create a formula that the person is supposed to follow?
I would beg you not to, because you don't know what that person is passionate about in their career. And so I know I'm not telling you something you don't know. It's presuming any mentor and presuming they know what's best for another person before they've listened. It would be foolish, to put it mildly. That doesn't mean you would never share what you think would be beneficial for them. After you've done the listening and after you've gotten to know them for a while and you see them exhibiting some behavior that you think is not helping them achieve what they had said they want to achieve, sure, now you can jump in and say, do you think that behavior is helping you achieve your goals? But that comes after an established relationship and after listening an awful lot to understand what it is that turns that person on professionally and where they want to go and where they see themselves, and perhaps even opening their eyes to seeing themselves achieve more than what they had initially described. But you can't set up that career path for them until you've done a heck of a lot of listening, and that, in my opinion, becomes a very interactive conversation anyway.
Yeah. To that point, sometimes a mentor can see something in someone that they may not see in themselves and provide some guidelines on how to navigate the internal machinations of an organization, of a company, to get to a role that might be beyond their scope, might be something they actually do want to do, and they just aren't sure how to get there. And so a mentor can help provide some connections to a mentee. They can help open up some doors for a mentee. They can open up conversations, at least, for a mentee. And a mentor can really help guide the mentee, who presumably is earlier in their career and possibly hasn't been a part of the company for as long as you have. And so it can be really helpful to provide guidelines to a mentee and expectations to a mentee that will help them navigate getting to their own goals.
Absolutely. Obviously, there's an awful lot of learning that goes on as a new person in a company. So they don't need to step on all the landmines that you might have done earlier in your career if you can help them navigate a little bit better and offer that guidance that you're suggesting. It's obviously critical to provide that and help them perhaps not have to relearn all the lessons that you learned the first time around.
That's right. That's right. You also talked about just the fulfillment itself at being a mentor. Mentor can also learn new perspectives because they're speaking to somebody who's, again, presumably newer in the organization or newer in their career, and they may not recognize what obstacles that person has ahead of them and what the resources the company may or may not have available to somebody earlier on in their career. And so learning all of that, you might be in a role that you can help influence and change and provide more opportunities for growing your talent within your organization. Ultimately, that strengthens your company. It strengthens your organization. When you can help grow new leaders, it actually not only helps with talent development, but research also shows that it improves retention to both be a mentor and have a mentor in a company as well.
Absolutely true. And you reemphasized the importance of listening as you were discussing it there. There's a ton of learning that goes on for the mentor, not just the mentee. And so listening a lot and hearing the perspective of the junior employee is invaluable. Certainly I know as I got more and more senior, I got further away from what it really is like to be one of the individuals on a specific project. And so
you were really far away from knowing what it's like to be an individual on a specific project.
Okay, I was really far away. All that does is reemphasize the importance of mentoring not just the people who are a level or two below me, but mentoring people who are new at the organization. And because I did have the opportunity to do that, I got an awful lot of insight that I had lost or had forgotten in any case over years of going up the management chain. And so it brought incredibly important perspective to the way that I was trying to lead the organization and gave me perspective that was incredibly helpful in moving through really, really challenging times. So it happened that I was leading the organization through the pandemic. And there were all sorts of challenges for young scientists and engineers in our organization that I wasn't experiencing because my kids are out of the house and, I'm older and so forth. So that perspective brought me back down to earth for some of the challenges that were going on and helped us run the organization much more effectively. And in fact, having so many of those younger people lead efforts to address the challenges that came with that event, so that now we're growing them as leaders because they're helping to lead how that organization is responding to the challenges. And so the experience of me mentoring those folks is actually what made me become much more aware of what was going on in the company across a much broader swath, and in the long run helped our company navigate some very, very challenging times. And so I will forever be grateful for all the learning that went on because I was mentoring, the learning I was doing, coming in from the different perspectives of the mentees. Absolutely invaluable for the welfare of the company.
So we keep talking about this word mentoring, and we haven't yet defined it. How would you define mentorship, Bill?
Well, I think that mentorship is driven by being able to give advice to people that you're mentoring. Even though you don't know everything, you know things that they don't know. And so there's a great opportunity to pass on the benefit of your experience. There's an old expression that good judgment comes from experience and experience comes from exercising poor judgment. And certainly I've had plenty of opportunities to exercise poor judgment. And again, this goes back to why does everybody have to relearn all of the lessons that I learned the hard way? If I can help them navigate those things, that's all the better for them and for their career. And so it's important to acknowledge that if you're going to be a mentor, you don't know everything and you're never going to know everything. And so having some humility as you go through that and acknowledging when you're in that relationship, I'm here to help guide you, but I expect I'll be learning an awful lot from you as we go through this together. And ultimately, it's really about being able to give candid, compassionate, and honest feedback to people that are trying to grow their careers. And so for me, the mentorship is that gift of giving people that feedback and helping them to grow professionally and personally.
And sometimes receiving feedback too.
Well, actually, that's the part that for the mentor is the most beneficial part. If you're willing to listen, if you're actually listening to what's going on, you get to learn a whole bunch about the things that you're getting right and the things that you're out to lunch on. If you build the mentoring relationship well enough, there's two-way feedback, and being able to take that feedback, not only to give it but to take it, that's a gift from your mentee.
Absolutely. So we have both retired from our primary careers and we're at a different stage in our lives. Do you still have mentors today?
Absolutely. It's crazy not to, because I needed mentoring as I was coming into retirement so what does retirement look like? It is not fantasy land where every day is sweetness and light just naturally because you don't have work to do. There's an important piece to finding meaning in retirement as well. And fortunately, I've had several good mentors who retired ahead of me who have provided guidance and insight and listening. And so that's been invaluable. And so now that we're into something new and different in retirement, there's an awful lot of mentoring that I'm going to need. The mentoring, in my opinion, should never stop, and having multiple mentors is invaluable.
So you're talking about mentors when it comes to transitioning to a totally new role in life, out of your primary career into a new role, but still having purpose. Mentors can really come from any stage, in any place in life. I like to consider having a board of directors or board of mentors in my own life. So I might have a mentor that's related to work. I might have a mentor, and actually more than one. I do have more than one that's related to what's next. What am I wanting to be intentionally focused on in this next stage of my life? I also have a mentor that helps me with some health goals that I have. I have a mentor when it comes to other hobbies that I want to try. I'd love to get a mentor in learning how to garden because these thumbs are not green. And I'd love to learn that from somebody and just get advice and get feedback from somebody in the true art of mentoring on how to grow beautiful plants, how to grow vegetables and that kind of thing. So mentors can really come from a swath of life. And like you said, it's crazy not to have them.
It's fundamental, and you're capturing this as we're wrapping up the first podcast. It seems like it's important to recognize that you can have a mentor for anything that you want to get done in your life. You can have mentors for family. You can have mentors for marriage. You can have mentors for work, for hobbies, for anything. And so the importance of that should not be overlooked. And it's foolishness not to be looking for those people in your life who can offer that kind of assistance, that kind of feedback, and that kind of growth for you.
Absolutely. And so we've covered a little bit already about mentoring, and mentoring is really a very robust topic with lots to discuss regarding benefits, challenges, stories of success, stories of failure, life lessons to share that maybe others won't have to relearn. We can't wait to keep this conversation going. We'd love to hear from you, our listeners, about what questions you have, what topics you'd like to see us discuss. Feel free to leave us a comment or reach out to us individually on LinkedIn, and we'll talk to you next time.